Is the future of Judo a hybrid style that includes Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, and wrestling? Let's talk about it on today's episode. Hey everyone, I'm Sensei Stanley. I'm a second-degree black belt out of Monroe, North Carolina. I was an educator for 16 years. This is year 25 for me in Judo. I also coach wrestling, and I currently teach Judo in Indian Trail, North Carolina. Happily, next month, I'm actually opening up a dojo in Monroe, North Carolina in my own front yard, which is so exciting. My goal is to spread grappling to as much of the world as I can. I want to help people understand what grappling is. I want to increase people's skill level, especially on the feet when it comes to takedowns and throws. And also, I want to help take away some of the misconceptions people have about Judo specifically. So let's dive into it. I was the guest on the podcast Booze BJJ, which you could find on YouTube. I suggest people check that out. I want to give a big shout out and a thank you to Thomas and Wale for having me on the podcast. Wow. What a great experience. Thank you so much. Two awesome individuals with a whole bunch of knowledge when it comes to grappling. A few things that we talked about on the podcast were my beginnings in Judo, which I normally don't get to tell my own story because I am the host most of the time. So it was awesome that I was able to tell my story, how I got into Judo at 17, who influenced me to try it out, how I ended up trying out Judo kind of just by chance because I wanted to wrestle and we didn't have any wrestling in my town. We also get into why I teach, how I teach, and some of the things I think are very important when it comes to teaching in general, but also teaching grappling. Is the future of Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, and maybe even wrestling a combination of everything? A hybrid, a system of grappling. I know I'm not the only one that thinks that grappling might be headed in that direction. It might be called one thing, but it encompasses a lot. But in reality, if we think about it, we're actually talking about old school Judo. So old school Judo had leg attacks, it had strikes, but mostly it had the throws and takedowns. There was also a lot more time spent on the ground as far as the submission aspect of Judo in comparison to what it is today. The sport of Judo has kind of taken a new direction on how Judo is taught. But if we go back to the beginning, it kind of was a hybrid sport. Lastly, on our podcast interview, I talked about my coaching and teaching philosophy, both when it comes to in the classroom. Like I said, I was a classroom teacher for 16 years, as well as a wrestling coach for 16 years, but also what I've taken out of the classroom and brought onto the tatamis. So, I hope you enjoy this interview with me, Sensei Stanley, on Booze and BJJ. Thank you so much. Enjoy.
Awesome. Hey everybody, it's Thomas from the Booze and BJJ podcast, special Wednesday night edition. We have our friend Cole Stanley here, and it's going to be our first time chatting with him. And Cole, go ahead and tell us about yourself, and we can go from there.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I've been the host of, I've been on that side of the camera or on the microphone for quite a bit, but as far as being a guest, this is actually my first, so this is kind of cool. But my name is Cole Stanley. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm from Illinois, and this is year 25 of me in martial arts. Currently, I teach Judo 2 nights a week in Charlotte, North Carolina. We started the program in March of 2024. So we're only about a year and a half old, and it came from me knowing the gym owner through one of my wrestlers, because I coached wrestling for 16 years. And I had already kind of done jiu-jitsu a little bit back in Illinois, but, not too much. But I predominantly was, a judo player for most of my career. And then when one of my wrestlers, John, he started talking about it, and he's like, "Why don't you, come down and do some judo in the off season, some jujitsu in the off season?" I'm like, "Okay," So it kind of started there, and I was training there for probably about a year and a half, and then we had talked about a judo program because he had a judo program previously, and that program dissolved and had been dissolved for about a year, and he wanted to get the program going again, but wanted somebody, to kind of be there as a permanent fixture for a little while. So um, I had to tell him no initially because I was coaching wrestling, so I could only do, judo probably, 4, 5, 6 months out of the year because we were wrestling, obviously during the season, but
Mm-hmm.
preseason, postseason, and then when I decided that I wasn't going to coach wrestling anymore, I talked to Davis. I'm like, "Hey, you still interested in judo?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah. What are you going to do with wrestling?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that was my last year. I'm I'm done with that." But yeah, I don't know. As far as um, me outside of the judo realm, I was a teacher in the school system for 16 years. I am a father of a 2-year-old. I've been married for 14 years. So, life is good, man. And, I'm trying to just be encompassed in the world of martial arts because, when I was younger and I was going through it, it really didn't mean the same to me as it does now. It's kind of become full circle. And whenever I was a competitor, we all understand that sometimes in the competitive realm, you get a little bit selfish and you kind of focus on you and try to accomplish the goals that you might have as a competitor, you know. But now those days are behind me, and I've kind of really been encompassed by the teaching aspect of martial arts. And I kind of feel like all these years of being in the classroom and coaching wrestling, kind of led me up to this,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm in a good place personally, and just very thankful that I'm presented with these opportunities to teach people that want to learn. And I don't know, I just love what I do, and it's I feel very fortunate about it. So mm,
Yeah, good. I think we're similar in a few aspects. So, yeah, my martial arts background, I actually started with judo at
mm,
age 12 or 13, and I did that up
mm,
until freshman or sophomore year in college. And actually, the place I
mm,
went to college, there they had a brand new sports facility, but there was no real place to do judo that was accessible. So they had a quote unquote martial arts room, but it was full of people doing training boxing and this weird kendo club that kind of confused me.
mm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, every once in a while somebody would come in and they said they would do they train judo, but it was never very consistent. So instead of looking around a little further, I just focused on school and I started breakdancing.
Mm,
So
interesting.
yeah, that kept me in shape and it kept me going. And when that fizzled out when I was 30 or 31, um, I got the feeling that something was missing. No matter what I did, no matter what hobby I picked up, something was missing. And around age 36, I decided I wanted to do judo again because that was
Mm,
that was pretty much my main hobby. You know, it was what I fell in love with for a very long time. But because of breakdancing, my hips and knees were not going to allow that. But I didn't know it at the time. So that's when I took a 40-minute intro to jiu-jitsu class with my coach, who's a judo Olympian. So
Mm.
my plan was originally, get in there and see if I could get him to teach me some judo, but at
Sure.
least train judo with me. But
Mm-hmm.
the judo class at the gym he taught at fizzled out, so it was like
Mm-hmm.
right after I joined. So it was strictly just jujitsu, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, 9 years later, um, I'm still training with him, and he awarded me my black belt back in March.
Mm-hmm.
But um, my coach is Mongolian, so wrestling
Mm.
is part of their culture.
Oh
So
yeah.
simply by proxy, so to speak, I picked up some wrestling, some Mongolian wrestling, and he has a judo program now at the gym that he runs, and
Mm-hmm.
it's actually really good. But I have to choose. I just turned 45. I have three
Mm-hmm.
kids. It's either
Mm-hmm.
do judo and get hit by a planet repeatedly, or do jujitsu. So I stuck with jujitsu, and I teach no gi on Fridays, and that because of the nature of our gym and the people who float in and out, that becomes this weird mesh of jujitsu and wrestling and judo and Mongolian wrestling. It's like there's aspects of it that are just kind of melded together. So
Mm-hmm.
it's it's really just like it's just a good time. I enjoy training with the fellas, and I also taught kids classes for a couple of years. Yana and I both taught kids classes, so learned a lot from that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, oh, Cole, this is Wale. He's one of our co-hosts.
Hey, how you
Hey,
doing?
Will,
Yeah.
I'm doing great, man. Thank you. How
Yeah.
about yourself?
Good. Yeah. Is
Awesome.
there any noise in the background? I got my fan on. I don't know if y'all can hear that.
No.
All
Uh,
right.
That's good.
no, you're fine.
Zoom out.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Cole, there were a couple things you wanted to talk about. Why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Well, one thing that I do want to talk about, and I kind of just piggybacks off of what you were talking about with kind of that blended style. You know, when when I teach judo, I kind of take the majority of the aspects and the techniques and the kind of like the core principles of judo. But when you coach wrestling for a long time and you do jiu-jitsu and you teach judo in a jiu-jitsu club, then aspects of the other arts kind of come over. And I really think that that's kind of like the direction that some of the grappling arts are headed. You know, you're getting individuals all over the place that are teaching this blended style, right? They call it jujitsu, or they call it judo, or they call it submission grappling, or whatever it is, and it's kind of just a little bit of a blend of all the different things. And I really think that, especially with judo on such a decline over the last couple decades, that the way that it's going to survive, well, a decline in the United States, not a decline worldwide, but a decline in the United States. I think that these blended styles, to where you have jiu-jitsu clubs teaching judo, you have judo that is coming back with the leg attacks and spending a little bit more time on the ground doing submissions, that's kind of the direction that it's going. And I kind of see, like I said, like this hybrid style coming out. And even when I teach, again, it's like I call it judo, but the majority of the stuff that I do is kind of like a hybrid of everything. Whenever I do maybe like some of the hip throws, or any of the throws that require you kind of rolling through. I talk about this is judo mindset. This is specifically for judo, right?
Hmm.
Like this is not going to be very applicable in jiu-jitsu,
Right.
but you know, that's kind of just added to what I'm doing, right? Like I talk about throwing with control and then having options after you throw, so it could be, going into submission, going into side control, going to knee on belly again. Like if you're getting into jiu-jitsu mindset, even if it's a self-defense type of thing, you threw somebody who have their sleeve at the left hand, you could, kick them in the solar plexus and run away or something like that. So, like I really can see that grappling as a whole is starting to go in that direction. And I think that, this blended approach is going to be a way that something like judo is going to kind of pigtail off jiu-jitsu and hopefully get a little bit bigger again at some point.
Well, I do know that at least out here, judo seems to be picking up quite a bit. A lot of the coaches in the area are either judo black belts as well, or they're going to judo programs with the intent of moving towards their judo black belt. Um,
Uh-huh.
like I said, like our coach was a judo Olympian. When we first started our gym, we offered judo classes, but there didn't seem to be much interest. We restarted them up, and now that's I think our second best program. So judo, at least in this area, is no longer on the decline. I feel like it's picking up quite a bit.
Good.
So that's the good thing. But I do notice that a lot of the judo guys tend to stay away from the jiu-jitsu classes for now, at least at our gym. But yeah,
I kind of blame MMA for the sort of decline and the uptick of judo, because it's kind of like I think MMA got people thinking, oh, let me, it's in the name. Let me kind of mix all these different styles. So let me take something from judo. Let me take something from, you know, wrestling, that sort of thing. But at the same time, it's like when you're in the ring, you're not there like, you know, doing hip tosses and all that. You're hardly, you can, but it's not, it's it takes a bit more setup, you know. But I do think, like you all are saying, I do think judo is definitely kind of making a comeback, and I think that people are understanding that you need a good stand up game. You can't just sit to the ground as soon as you start. I don't know if in official IBJJF rules, if it's a penalty if you go straight to the ground when you start. It might be. So that might also be something driving kind of people thinking about, okay, maybe I need to learn some judo. Yeah.
so I think it is a penalty in IBJJF or a warning or something like that. But I mean, did you ever take my no-gi class, Wale? Or
No, I don't think I
so
did. Is
something
you, yeah.
something I do specifically is I the first 15-20 minutes is always grip fighting and wrestling from your feet. I don't like my guys just making contact and sitting down. Like
Mm.
maybe it's just the old school martial artist in me. Like I don't see that strategically as being smart. But I've also seen BJJ guys just, especially in this area, starting to just press forward and steamroll you if you just sit down on the ground. So
Yeah.
it's just not a good
I,
idea, you know.
I
And
think I think that there has, when people first started sitting down, right? I don't think a lot of people really knew how to counter that. But, there's been several years of people doing that now. So there are counters for that. I recently watched a video where, this guy, he just full guard, he sat down to the ground, and the other guy basically kind of like cartwheeled over him and, and took his back. So, I think the smart ones are thinking about, okay, how can I maximize the stand up? How can I keep the other person up? because that's also, that's exhausting when you have to fight standing up and nobody is going to the ground. That's exhausting. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I think that, the whole basis of being well rounded, whenever, you compare, and I've talked with people about this, the martial art compared to the sport aspect, there's a time and a place. And, the majority of the time that I was involved in judo was very like competition based. Like, not that competition was pushed, but whenever rules adapted and rules changed, it depicted kind of what we did in practice. It was always kind of, we have to follow the current rules of judo, as opposed to, this is judo in its entirety, and this is kind of what judo is meant for. And you're not limited on, like grips, or limited on not attacking the legs and things like that. And it's the same with jiu-jitsu as well. It's a lot of it is depicted on the current rules of whatever jiu-jitsu is at the time. You don't get the points that you would get from a takedown, as opposed to, knee on belly, passing guard, getting side control, getting mount. Those are larger points. And the emphasis in, when you take a martial art and you make it a sport, it starts to be depicted by, the limitations of these rules, right? But as the creation of judo and jiu-jitsu, you know, the it was an art, and it was taught to encompass a lot of different things, and it was supposed to be, a way of life, and it was supposed to be meant as education and learning things back and forth. And we, judo and jiu-jitsu, have both gotten away from that aspect. I did go to a jiu-jitsu gym in Asheville, and they were a self-defense basis of jiu-jitsu, and they really, like, nobody there really competed. Like, they were just doing the self-defense aspect. So they were learning how to immobilize people, and focusing on, ways that you can use jiu-jitsu on the street, and way that you can use jiu-jitsu to defend yourself and not be limited by the rules of the competition. So you know I'm just not sure, like, as far as like the direction of what everything's going. I know that the more I do this, the more I want to tap into kind of like the old rule sets of judo and the old rule sets of jiu-jitsu, and not be limited by, the things that are, based around competition, but kind of like the whole well-rounded aspect, and I think that that's super important.
Oh no, I agree. Nothing would make me happier than be able to do a kataguruma in a judo competition without getting disqualified. But when I did judo, it was before the rule change, so kataguruma was my go-to technique.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, there was also an incident last year, where about a year and a half ago, where an older gentleman wanted to do judo with me, but I didn't ask him which rule set. I assumed it was under the old rule set, so hit him with kataguruma. He just looked at me funny. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But I see what you're saying. There's certain things about jiu-jitsu that the way that people, like the techniques that people are doing in competition, like their go-to stuff. I sit there and think, like, but if this were a fight, I could just punch you in the face after your first move. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's sport, so of course nobody's gonna punch you in the face. But you practice how you fight. Like, if you're if you have to defend yourself and you sit and pull guard and you go supine, you know, bad things happen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't you hear that, jiu-jitsu doesn't work in the streets?
Just stand up.
I think for it to have survived as long as it has, you kind of had to soften it up and, make it a sport. And then now it's kind of more of a moneymaker, for some people. And so they're even more cautious than, the old school where you dojo storm people and you throw them around and, you break arms, that sort of thing. Not saying that I want to see that happen, but, it would be nice to, because it's kind of disappointing when I go to a competition and the person doesn't even try any stand up, because it's like, I've learned stand up, I've done judo, I want to do judo, and then when we get to the ground we transition to whatever else. So yeah, it would be nice to see more schools doing judo. And I think the problem too is that there's not enough. I don't think right now there are enough instructors who have been trained in judo to kind of give that instruction of how to do stand up properly. So they'll just stick to whatever their kind of go to is. So I don't know. Maybe when more instructors kind of take more interest in judo, then you might see even more stand up coming in.
I could definitely say that one thing that I thoroughly have enjoyed about jiu-jitsu is it does have more freedom as far as techniques that are allowed. And, you get obviously way more time on the ground, as compared to judo. And once I was able to kind of to shift my mindset and get more in kind of like a jiu-jitsu kind of more open-minded mindset, it kind of started to open up my judo a little bit more, because I'm not limited by things like a one-sided grip, two hands on one side, or hand over the back, or hand on the belt, or hand on the pant leg, whatever it might be. Because you know, just like in folk style wrestling, judo is a go 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 martial art. You have to attack, like go. You get penalized if you don't.
Yeah.
And jiu-jitsu kind of helped me slow down a little bit, and then it also opened up my game a little bit more, because again, I wasn't as limited by some of these gripping rules, especially, and things like that. And that urgency to attack first and kind of ask questions later kind of started to fizzle out a little bit. And when I didn't feel like I was on a shot clock all the time, as soon as I grabbed somebody, like I said, it kind of opened up my judo a little bit more. So that's one thing that I definitely appreciate and really like about the jiu-jitsu realm. Is it is more open-minded with some of the restrictions on the rules. Did I know Wale, I think, because I listened to a couple episodes. I think you've been doing judo a while. I think you were a brown belt, maybe. But have you experienced kind of the same thing when it comes to like shifting from a judo to a jiu-jitsu mindset, like during open mats or randori?
Yeah, I would say that, kind of echo the same thing, that shifting from jujitsu to judo uh, actually kind of helped me slow down more, to slow down my jujitsu game. So it's kind of, I guess goes both ways. So like from jujitsu to judo, it helped me slow down my jujitsu game because I was more confident on my feet, as
Yeah.
opposed to, and before I did judo, I would, as soon as the bell rings, I'm going for like a, double leg, or I'm pulling guard, or that sort of thing. And I think that's because I wasn't comfortable with standing up. I wasn't confident. So I think judo gave me that in jujitsu. And then I think what jujitsu gave me in judo is, being able to, again, confidence. Yeah, I'm confident in being on the ground when I'm doing judo. So
Yeah.
it's like actually where I do judo, they do integrate a lot of groundwork,
Mm.
and I think that's great because I think both martial arts need that. So jiu-jitsu needs more stand-up, judo needs more groundwork. Yeah, because we're
Mm.
not Olympians here. We're not gonna we're not gonna get like ippon on people as soon in any
Yeah.
competition. So you got to learn how to do the groundwork. Yeah,
Yeah. Right. Hmm.
yeah. I did jujitsu for maybe I want to say for probably about 6 to 7 years. Yeah, about
Okay.
7 years before I started doing more judo. Although I did do some judo in the past, when
Mm.
Thomas and I used to train. There's a judo instructor there. Yeah, but again, there wasn't that much interest, and I think probably because people are not comfortable with being thrown around.
Hmm.
Oh,
Hmm.
I mean, I will say though, when Master Sugi started throwing me around when I first started with him, like it was the most polite
Hmm.
5 minutes around Dory I've ever experienced. And
Hmm.
yeah, so just real quick on that, like I don't think people understand. Like I outweighed him by 100 pounds,
Oh
and
wow.
he still threw me like I was a child,
With
but
Of
control.
course.
with control, and it was very
Yeah,
polite too. Like I don't know how to describe it fully, but it was like the most polite throws, butt kicking, whatever you want to call it, I've ever experienced. Like we
Hmm.
finished, and he gave me a hug, and I was like, I like this guy. I'll stick with him. But yeah, but yeah, like I think starting with judo first helped with jujitsu because it helped me with my grips and like
Oh
controlling
yeah.
people. White belt on white belt violence is
Yeah.
a real thing.
yeah,
So it did
Mm.
help me out, especially since I started as a little older than most people that we trained
Hmm.
with.
Hmm.
So yeah, just wanted to add that in there.
yeah. I think that's going back to what you were saying, Cole, is the well-roundedness that you get from doing multiple martial arts. You get that confidence. I know if I ever did wrestling, then I would get a certain boost of confidence that okay, now I
Hmm.
can add this to my game, and maybe there are things
Yep.
that maybe there are things that wrestling would help open up for me.
Hmm. Yeah. No, absolutely. And it all kind of overlaps with each other, you
Yeah,
know. But yeah, I definitely. I mean, I like this well-rounded approach. And again, like when you go back to early judo and early jiu-jitsu, it was more well-rounded. It's like the competition aspect of it was not there yet. They had randori obviously, and people could challenge each other in a safe way, but the competition wasn't there yet to kind of limit you on things that you could do.
yeah,
But you know me, I've been, again, just like super fortunate and very thankful that I kind of had this idea in my head. I was listening to whatever a podcast with Justin Flores or Shintaro Higashi or somebody like that, and they're like, I've been going around and basically teaching judo for jujitsu, and I'm like, okay, and I did, I've been doing jujitsu for a couple of years now, so I definitely understand the rule aspect of it and how to take someone down that would be a little bit more applicable to the jujitsu realm. So I've been going around and teaching, judo for jiu-jitsu at a lot of schools, and they, like I said, I've been very, very fortunate. I feel very humbled that there's been so many people that have been open-minded to this and have opened their doors to me. So the need for instructors that don't have the wrestling or judo background, but are black belts in jiu-jitsu, are wanting to learn, and that's a good thing too. Because like it, the whole mindset of like train with me and nobody else is
Yeah.
obsolete. It's obsolete. Because it's not only a closed-minded approach, but there's so many resources out there now for you to learn from, right? And like as an instructor, you should want your students to do better than you, and you should want them to bring something to the table so you learn something as well. So like I'm a big like proponent for learning from other people. Like I have a rotating like teaching exchange or whatever you want to call it, to where I go to a gym, somebody else's gym, and teach judo for a night, and then I have them come to my club and teach judo for a night. And I think that it's really important, and the students learn and I learn, and it increases the community, and it gets people to know each other. And because again, like judo is so small right now, especially like in North Carolina and South Carolina is so small. It kind of lets the students know a little bit too, that there's people out there that do judo too, and they've been doing it a while, and they have a different approach on things. And I encourage them to go out and learn. So it's like the whole only train with me and don't train with somebody else is kind of obsolete. And like you were saying, like if you have an instructor that teaches jujitsu that already has a black belt in judo, or was a wrestler in high school or whatever it might be, you know they're going to add something else to their students. And the ones that don't have that kind of fell into the schools of, we're going to start every round of rolling on our knees or on our butts. That they're starting to see that they've kind of missed the mark a little bit on jujitsu.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the other thing to add is that there's so many more options too. So, you know,
Yeah.
you can someone's like, you're only allowed to train with me or whatever. And you say, no, I'm just gonna go down the street somewhere else.
Right.
That's more
Yeah,
open.
sure.
Yeah, I mean
Mhm.
back in the day you didn't have that. So that's kind of the
No.
unfortunate thing.
Mhm.
And I do think that, uh places where it's you start on your knees, or where they're gonna start sitting down or whatever. I think instructors are doing their students a disservice, because
Right.
it's if that student, for example, wants to do competitions, you're not going to start on your knees, you have to start standing up, or if that student
Mhm.
is happens to be jumped or something, it's like you're not going to tell them, okay, let's start on our knees, right?
Mhm.
So yeah,
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
there needs to be more openness to doing stand up, and think I feel like that's where things are going. That it's slowly kind of getting there.
Mhm.
But I like what I said before. I think the problem is a lot of people are uncomfortable with. You're already coming into an uncomfortable environment where you're getting rolled on, sweat on, and all this other stuff. To add on top of that, hey, you got to start standing up and you have to start getting thrown around. That's another
Mhm.
level of uncomfortable that I don't think a lot of people are gonna be cool about. Yeah,
You know, um, like I said, like the way that my class on Friday is structured, like I said, first 15, 20 minutes, you're on your feet.
yeah,
And then, depending on how hard everybody works during the class, I do something called the wall, where I have everybody just sit on the wall. I call up people one at a time, and they do one-on-one matches. And there's only one rule: you can't pull guard. You start standing. If you hit the ground, you hit the ground until I say stop. And it also doubles as like what do you call it, morale a morale building activity, because guys are cheering, guys are talking a little trash, but you know it's all good fun, and that's the format we kept for pans recently, and our guys did pretty well. So, but yeah, I think coaches who don't teach takedowns, throws, or anything of the sort from standing, I think a number of guys are starting to realize that they're missing out on something.
Yeah.
Um, but on that
Plus,
note,
it's
sorry.
also fun to throw people. It's
Oh
so
yeah.
much fun.
Yes, this is
Of
true.
course it is.
Yeah.
But something I've noticed recently, with all of our affiliate gyms and friends who own gyms and whatnot, I've noticed that there's a distinct, at least, style difference between a coach that does jiu-jitsu and judo and a coach that does jiu-jitsu and wrestling, because
Mhm.
our guys feel one way, Nakapon's guys feel a different way, and
Yeah, of
Isaac's
course.
guys, these are all coaches that Willie and I know, Cole. They have like a
Mhm.
dual background, and they all feel like slightly different. There's like a style there that's distinct,
Yeah.
and it could just be me, and it may just be something subtle that I picked up on, but I find it, kind of fun just to go from gym to gym randomly and just cross train, just to see the difference.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah. I
That
gotta.
and
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
kind of like lies in the question here, right? Is how do we encourage jiu-jitsu players to work on the stand-up game a little bit better? And I think that it all kind of starts with the instructor. You know, how much are not only they doing takedowns
Yeah.
during class, but also how, what are they doing to encourage their students to learn takedowns and improve their take, for the game from their feet. What is that going to take? It's like, are you going to bring somebody else in? Are you going to encourage them to go and learn from somebody else? Are you as an instructor going to kind of bite the bullet and go wear a white belt at a judo club for a while, or go do some, no-gi grappling, or go to an MMA club or whatever and do some wrestling there, but it's like, it all kind of goes back to that. And, like, I'm happy with the people that come to judo. My Friday nights have been my smaller nights, so maybe like 2 to 6 people. And then my Saturdays are larger, and I've been getting, 10, 12, 14 people on Saturdays, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
But there's probably about 150 jiu-jitsu players in the club too. So it's like, how can I make it to where they're interested to come? Because yes, it's hard to do two martial arts. I mean, it just is, especially when you're committing time to jiu-jitsu or to judo, and then you got to add another day. So if it were something as the head instructor encouraged people, like if they had a judo program at their club, getting in people's minds and saying, go to judo once a week, go to judo once a week, go and learn, I want you to get better. It kind of all originates from that. And again, like, how do we encourage instructors to promote it, and how do we encourage somebody that's doing jujitsu 3, 4, 5 times a week to add another night? and
Yeah.
go do judo or wrestling. You know, is something that's going to be pretty unfamiliar to them, right? And that's the question.
Yeah, you get them to fight everybody else standing up. And then, show them the benefits of judo. Yeah, I think it
Sure.
comes with the, one with a culture of those gym or wherever the school. And it's also, is it a culture of like, hey, of like curiosity, like, hey, maybe we can try this martial art, maybe we can kind of bring someone in to teach a different martial art or bring, and then it's also the mindset of the instructor. If they're just stuck in
Right.
their ways and they're like, oh, well, this works, or I'm not comfortable with with trying a new martial art because this works, or like jujitsu is the best thing ever, and I don't need to learn any other martial art. So yeah, I think it comes down to the mindset, and also being able to, I think it's important that instructors keep an open mind and definitely encourage their students to learn other martial arts. Yeah, even though it is adding an extra day, or at least have like one or two judo classes. Like my instructor Nakapan, he just he's been like a, I think he's been like a brown belt forever, or no, he's been like a blue belt of judo forever, and he was like, I got to knock this out. So in like a week, he got promoted. Judo, like, in judo.
Yeah.
So he got promoted, and now he's a black belt judo. And then he's also doing like, I think he did some, what's it called, wrestling. He did some wrestling, and then now he's doing. It's, I forget the name of the martial art, but it's like kind of like it's kind of like combat karate, sort of. But he definitely sort of branches out to all these different martial arts because he's curious about them, and then you bring something back from all of those. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think at the end of the day, it really is the culture of the place where you are to see if they're open enough to bring in other martial arts.
So, Cole, we're a little bit spoiled up here in Virginia. There's a number of coaches in the area who, like I said, are jiu-jitsu black belts as well as judo black belts, but they also branch off into other grappling arts.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'll admit we're kind of spoiled up here. I'm trying to think. Like most of the gyms I've trained at, I'm pretty certain that the head instructor is like a dual black belt. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think, but to the point, I think the way of getting people to do more takedowns and throws and stuff, fighting from their feet, is just to infuse it in the culture. Like if day one somebody comes in, you know, if you what I do and the way that the first 15 20 minutes of my no-gi class started mutated into what it was I started getting a lot of beginners and I just didn't want them pulling guard. So I automatically had them at minimum hand fight. We're hand fighting for
Yeah.
15 20 minutes. And then
Yeah.
the last 5 10 minutes or the next
Mm-hmm.
5 to 10 minutes, you can now do takedowns. Try
Mm-hmm.
something. And
Mm-hmm.
that would infuse that familiarity into them.
Mm-hmm.
So I've
I
had.
feel like,
Go ahead.
yeah,
No, no.
no,
You're,
I was saying I feel like if I was able to open up a gym, I would have every new member that wants to do jujitsu. You need to do like a 3 months. 3 months is just you doing stand up, just like
Mm-hmm.
you're not really doing anything else. Maybe you're learning the basics of shrimp and all that stuff, and but like 3 months, the majority of it is just stand up, and then you have to go up against, every week it's like a Shark Tank, and then you have to go up against more experienced people, and that would definitely get people to get comfortable with stand up.
yeah.
And then also when you take the flip side as well, whenever I got into jiu-jitsu, I had been doing judo for, I mean, I was a brown belt in judo. And I mean, well, I still don't feel like my submission game is very good still, but I mean, it was definitely not. I mean, I didn't feel very confident at all because most of the judo clubs that I went to, I mean, we barely practice any submissions, barely. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like the opposite to where like they would show, like one submission a month or whatever, and it's like it was the last 5 minutes of one class, so it's like I mean I could like kind of defend myself from submissions, but man, I just really didn't feel like I knew very much about like the concepts of control of submission. So it's the opposite too, I think. Also judo clubs need to take some extra time and work submissions, several times a week, and not just focus on takedowns only, again, because it has to deal with the rules and the time limit that you have to do certain things in judo. So, we need to just talk about, forget about the 5 seconds of activity on the ground. Let's take these submissions, let's slow them down. Because the way that I was taught how to do an arm bar was literally just fly into it, because that's kind of what judo does in a way. But I mean, no one really talked to me about, squeezing the knees, and you got to get the hips really close to the shoulder, and you have to point the thumb up to the sky, and you have to do this, and it's like nobody really, none of my instructors really told me to do that stuff. They just said, there's the arm, fly around, and get the submission. It's like I didn't understand it. And we never really spent any time on that. So, I think that it needs to do the flip side as well. Judo schools out there need to focus on taking the time to show what a submission really is and what are the aspects of it. Don't be worried about, the 5 second time limit of doing so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh no, I totally agree with that. Like there's been some guys who have floated through our gym that trained elsewhere initially, and you can kind of see a difference in quality of instruction by how they move and how they apply submissions or guard passing
Yeah.
versus your own gym. And we've we've had some guys who've gotten very discouraged because they felt like they didn't earn the rank. But I've had to have the dad talk with them. It's like, no, you earned your belt. Don't worry about it. Just come and train, and you'll improve. And they always do. So, but it's from a teaching perspective, it's a little bit weird to have those conversations because you're never sure if it's enough to keep the person coming back or if they've already made their mind that they were going to either go back to where they came from or if they were just going to quit altogether. So,
Yeah.
yeah, like
I mean, but all you can do is try, right? Ultimately, it's not what ultimately it's up to them, you know, if
Mm-hmm.
they heed whatever you're telling them. So yeah, that's all you can do is try.
I
that's
mean,
true.
me being in the classroom and being a coach in the school system, I mean, I felt like I was always chasing and putting in more time with the people that were kind of iffy or were not into it or didn't care.
Hmm.
When I think back in retrospect, I should have been spending more time with people that wanted to be there and people that wanted to learn and people
Hmm.
that had questions and
Yeah.
people that wanted to, if it was wrestling, then that enjoyed the sport and wanted to be there every day. But it's like I had the wrong mindset. I was always worried about the people that weren't there. I was always worried about the people that I'm like, we need a 133 pounder, we got to keep this kid on the team, like he's only half-hearted and he's not here all the time, but like, how do I keep this kid on the team? When really I should have been focusing on the 152 pounder that was there every day and asking me questions,
Right.
but I think that's kind of a fault of my own, but, that kind of comes in, with teaching in general, there's going to be people that are going to succeed no matter what you do as a teacher. There's going to be people that fail no matter what you do as a teacher, but you got to focus on all the ones that are in the middle that you can help, that actually have a little bit of curiosity and a little bit of want to improve, and that could be for martial arts or for anything. You got to work with those kids or adults, and you can't be worried about the people that are wishy-washy, and the ones that are going to quit after a month. It's like it's hard, and it took me a long time to kind of like, because I wanted to save every kid. I wanted to have it, I wanted all the kids to get A's. I wanted all the kids to, be in wrestling and stay in wrestling for 4 years and things. But unfortunately, the majority of them will not, so it's I don't know. I had to kind of get out of that, because I spent a lot of energy on ones that, we're going to not do good and we're going to quit no matter what I told them. I could be Dan Gable and, they're going to still quit the wrestling team. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it's different. Teaching is different in other things. So like in the traditional sense, when you're teaching someone, you know, teaching in a school, let's say like math and English and all that stuff, especially if it's a kid, you want them to succeed, and you're
yeah,
always going to focus your energy on the ones who aren't really doing so well, because it's kind of like they have to succeed. But I think
right.
when it becomes, because you have to go to school, right? But when it becomes a choice where people are like, I'm choosing to go to this martial arts school because I'm
Mm-hmm.
choosing to do this martial art or try it out, you know, you can tell, I feel like within a week or two, which people are going to be there and which people are going to put the work in. And you kind of just have to, do what you can for folks who aren't as invested or who aren't as interested.
Yeah.
And, like you're saying, focus on the ones who are there all the time, who are coming, who are asking questions. And it's not like a
Yeah.
slight on the teacher or like on the school, if you're given quality instruction. It really is
Mm-hmm.
just, you know, who has the interest to do it, because I'm sure there's probably something else in their life that they may be more interested in, and they're like, I'm going to spend more time doing that than this one thing that I was going to try and see how it worked. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think, you know focusing on the kids who want to be there, or focusing on the folks who want to be there,
Mm-hmm.
uh, that's the way to go. There was someone we used to train with, and he said that I don't even bother to learn people's names within the first 2 weeks of me being there. It's like most of the times they're gone.
Was that Yo?
Well,
No,
Oh,
uh, Corey.
that's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's like most, and I mean it's true. We saw that. People come in. They try. You know they try it out, and they leave within a week or two. Which, and again, it's not a bad thing. It's just they have different priorities. They have different
yeah.
interests, which is fine. But yeah, focus and energy on the folks who are going to keep coming back. Then
Mm-hmm.
that's the way to go.
So I actually learned something interesting on that topic. There were a set of, I'm trying to say this as vaguely as possible without giving away who it is. There were brothers that come to our gym, and I always thought they were over aggressive, kind of had a bad attitude, just bad eggs. It rubbed me the wrong way. So I also thought they didn't like me because I would be joking around and smiling with everybody else, but when it came to them, I was like
Mhm.
stone faced. So I can see their
Mhm.
perspective.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
what I started doing was I started giving them tips.
Mhm.
Like they'd be rolling with each other. They'd partner with each other all the time. I'd, hey, just adjust this, put your knee there, pinch your knees, grab the lapel a few inches to the right. And then at first they would just look at me like I was crazy and just continue what they were doing. And then after a while they started implementing my adjustments that I would just yell at them. And all of a sudden they went from basically not interacting with me at all to basically becoming my glue buddies. Like as soon as I step foot in the
Yeah.
gym, both of them run over,
Mhm.
and if they're not asking me a zillion questions, they're standing like right next to me. And it's interesting to see that adjustment, because had I gone with my original mindset, oh, these kids are over aggressive, bad eggs, I would have
Mm.
never realized that's actually not how they are. They just honestly probably just didn't know any better.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's interesting. I think a shift in mindset sometimes, especially from a teaching perspective and a coaching perspective,
Yeah.
can reveal a lot,
I-
because you may not be evaluating or seeing what this person is doing
Yeah.
in a proper context. So,
Yeah. And I mean, it's got to be difficult. I mean, I haven't taught jujitsu before, but it's got to be difficult because it's like, like you were saying, you could kind of dismiss somebody who you think is a certain way, or you may invest so much time in this one person, and then one day they're just like, "Yeah, not for me," and they're gone.
Mhm.
It's just you can never tell.
well, that I
Oh
think that
my
was the
gosh.
subtext that I didn't point out, because I had been giving other people attention and not giving them any attention until recently.
Mm,
So luckily they stuck around, but honestly, if I were in their shoes, may not have.
yeah,
You know, like just time and attention is one thing that, as coaches or educators, in my opinion, is something that is gold to somebody
yeah,
somebody who's trying to learn something from you.
yeah. You got to strike the balance between investing your time in people and kind of giving people distance to either figure out if this is what's for them, or distance to quit because they're just not, you know, they just don't fit into the culture of the gym.
Yeah.
I mean, it's stuff that you're going to pick up as an educator too. Just teaching anything doesn't necessarily mean a school. Because coaching is teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's baseball, football, or martial arts, it's all teaching. I mean, what does sensei mean? Teacher, right? What's a professor? He's a teacher, right? It's all about teaching. But those relationships are interesting too, because sometimes it takes a while for you to break through those walls with certain kids or certain
Mm-hmm.
adults, to where you get the, it depends on the age. I mean, sometimes you get the sense that they absolutely freaking hate you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
And then one day something happens to where you're nice to them, or whatever, they drop a book and you go and help, help them, or they say that they're hungry or whatever, and you give them a snack or just whatever, or there's just like all of a sudden you have this conversation, and then after that the kid's like your best friend, like they're a
yeah,
completely different person, like
yeah,
they will like do anything for you. And just a couple days ago, it's like they wouldn't even smile at me, and look me in the face, whatever. It's like it's interesting, and I've had kids that are like that too, to where you think that they absolutely hate you, and you keep being nice to them, or sometimes it's just some random act, and it's like eye-opening to them,
Mm-hmm.
and then they view you differently, and then their relationship with you completely changes. It's very interesting, because I've had the best of both worlds, or in the other case, the worst, to where, for some reason, like, you'll have good relationships with the kid, and then something will happen, and then after that, they don't like you anymore. They don't want to be your friend. They don't want to be respectful to you. They don't want to talk to you. So I've had it both ways. It's super interesting, but what is, you know, martial arts is a great environment to socialize and to create friendships with people, because, I mean, especially with the grappling arts too, man. It's like, I, and you guys could probably speak for the same, that you've met somebody for the first time and you go live with them, and whether it's jujitsu or whatever, you're both going hard, you're taking down each other, you're submitting each other back and forth, you're having just a session, like a hard, good session. Afterwards, you just want to hug the guy. It's really interesting how that works. It's like, I can't explain it. It's like the physical contact, and the controlled aggression, and the fact that somebody is going to try to impose their will on me as I try to impose it on them, and it's interesting that it, like, draws people close to each other. If you guys can relate and probably understand what I'm talking about.
Oh yes.
You're like a second ago, you were literally choking them, and then
Yeah.
now you're like giving them a
Sure.
hug. I mean, it's like
Mhm.
Thomas and I, we would probably not have met if we didn't train together. We're still friends still today. So it's just, yeah, it's a great place to meet, you know, to meet people who are going to be in your life for a while. Especially if you're both gonna keep doing it for however long. Yeah.
So check this out. Yeah, we train with this guy named Yo, little Korean guy, and all of my jujitsu injuries, from white to beginning of purple belt, are all from this guy.
Wow.
And
Great.
I've known him since day one of jujitsu, and he's one of my best friends. But he's like, on paper, I should hate this man. You know, like I
Sure.
literally every injury I've gotten from him. Um,
Mhm.
um, I was getting surgery done, talking to the anesthesiologist, and come to find out, as soon as I said I did jujitsu, he goes,
Mhm.
"Oh, the head of our department does jujitsu. Do you know Yo Lee?" I'm like, I can't even
Mhm.
escape him in the hospital, and um,
That's awesome.
it was just hilarious, and
Mhm.
yeah, like that same instance, I intention. I don't think I told him where my room was when I was in recovery, and he barged in with like all these things that he knew that I liked and would need, and the nurses were
Mhm.
looking around confused, like, who is this guy? And he goes, by the way, and he throws a phone charger at me. He goes, he always forgets his phone charger. He needs that. And I was
Mhm.
thinking, okay, this is the realm where I think I shouldn't be your friends, because
Mhm.
they need to do their job and you're kind of interrupting things. But, again, had it not been for jujitsu, I wouldn't have this questionable friend who's one of my
Right.
best friends. But,
Shady
Yeah.
friends.
yeah. So,
Shady, dangerous friends that could kill
Yeah.
you. So.
yeah,
Yeah.
literally.
It's almost like when you have a shared traumatic experience, right? You're gonna be best friends forever. And the trauma
Mhm.
is from somebody almost choking you,
Yeah.
and like choking you to unconsciousness, that sort of thing, or somebody constantly injuring
Mhm.
Yeah, I did a really rough competition training for a couple weeks with my buddy CJ. And you were there, Wale, with
you.
the gosh, what's his name? Bald guy, black belt, Leodala black belt, Levi.
Hamid? Oh, dude. Oh, yeah, Levi.
Levi?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like if it wasn't for that class, me and CJ would not be friends. So
Mm.
never have met.
Mm-hmm.
I would have never met him. So, but that was kind of a traumatic experience. Levi
Yeah,
really liked to beat
yeah.
us up.
Those competition classes with Levi were rough. It's
Yeah.
just yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Mm-hmm.
and again, Levi was one of my best friends too. Like we're all good
Mm,
friends, just from beating each other up.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But all right, gentlemen, it is about that time. Um, Cole, if you'd like, we can do a part two next week or week after. So I
Yeah,
don't think
let me
we,
look into it.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I don't think we touched on every point that you had lined up. So,
Those
wait,
are just guidelines. Those are just ideas.
ah,
It's like we can talk about whatever, man.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
All right,
Most of the times on these we kind of meander and we don't, we start out with an agenda.
and it just
Somebody says something off the wall, we end up meandering, and then it's like it's time. So yeah,
well,
we like to talk about anything.
I usually try to keep it to an hour.
Yeah.
mm.
So, because that way I don't get in trouble with my son. So, final words for the night. Cole, would you like to say anything?
Well, I mean, a couple things really. So, I give this speech quite a bit, like when I'm out and teaching at all these at these dojos. I mean, not all these, but I mean, when I'm out teaching. Um, when I was 17 years old and I started judo, I had no ambitions of being a black belt, really. I mean, like, I'm like, okay, like you can get one, but it really, like, for the longest time, really wasn't a goal of mine. And I just kind of just stayed in the system, and just kept going to class and learning and going to a couple different clubs and learning from different people, and the belts would just slowly change on their own. And then one night I was presented with a black belt, and it was a complete surprise to me when it happened, and that was 17, years into it. So it's like, if if you're in it and you stick around, whether it's martial arts or whatever, like the things that you're going to pick up over time, and once you get so far into the game and you look back and kind of see how far you've come, it's it's interesting, and it's like, I I don't like I definitely don't think that, well, I know that there's so much more for me to learn. There's more that I don't know than there's stuff that I do know. And at times, like, I still feel like I'm a white belt, and like sometimes I'll get thrown or whatever, or I'll be trying to teach a technique and it'll just go terrible. And
Mm-hmm.
like, I just, it's just really interesting, the whole journey. But, so, if anybody listening is early in their career, early in their martial arts journey, just stick with it. Don't worry about the bad times. Don't worry about, the thousands and thousands of failures that you're going to have along the way. Just focus on, you know, enjoying being there and picking up stuff, and just put it in your tool belt. Um, and then before you know it, maybe you'll have a black belt around your waist. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And on that note, like being a black belt in jiu-jitsu was definitely not on my radar when I started. Like that was the furthest thing
Right.
away from
Sure.
what I wanted to do, which was just make it through the making it through the warm-ups was an accomplishment for me. So yeah, but never quit, and
Yeah.
9 years later, I got it strapped on my waist. Wale.
Yeah, I would echo the same thing. The interesting thing is with judo, especially the belts go in reverse order. So you're going like 10, 9, and it's counting down. When you get to black belt, it's first degree black belt, right? So it's in the whole idea is that that's when you're actually really learning. You're really kind of like you.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like all the other stuff is just prep work, and then once you hit black belt, that's when you're really learning and really like understanding either the culture or the all that stuff. So yeah, it's you for folks out there who are starting out, it's always you just got to stick with it, and it's I don't I didn't really starting out jujitsu. I didn't really like I before jujitsu. I didn't really do any other martial arts. I mean, I did Muay Thai for a bit, then I switched to jujitsu, and then later on did judo. So I never really, and I was like in my late 30s, and I never had done any martial art. So I didn't really have any concept of what the the value of the belts. So, but I knew that I'm gonna stick with this, and eventually I will get to a black belt. It's just a matter of time, literally. So yeah, again, folks out there who are doing any martial art, just stick with it. You'll eventually get there, and it applies to anything you do. And that's the beauty of it is that you could take that same dedication that you put into doing a martial art and put it in something else, and it's just a matter of time. You will get better at it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, some days you're gonna feel like you suck. Some days you're gonna be on top of the world. That's just the roller coaster ride. Yeah,
Yes, sir. Some days you're the hammer, some days you're the nail.
exactly.
And with that, now bid you all good night. See y'all
All
later.
right. See
Cole,
ya.
thank you for joining us tonight. It was a
Yeah,
pleasure.
thanks.
Thank you for having me.
Good meeting
It
you.
was a big honor. I really appreciate the
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah, of
Come
course.
back anytime.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.
Awesome. What a great interview that was on Booze and BJJ. Again, a big shout out and a thank you so much to Wale and Thomas for having me on. It was a real honor. I'm very happy that I have these platforms to be able to go on and share my story and my perspective about martial arts, life, and teaching. So a big thank you to them. Please check out Booze and BJJ. If you want to learn more and hear more about me, you can click on the link so you could listen to my newest episode on the Well-Rounded Grappler, which I am the host. Or if you're interested to see what my dojo looks like, which is behind me, I do have a video that shows the construction of the dojo. Also check that out.